guys, how are you doing? This is Madhvi from TaroticallySpeaking.com. Welcome to my channel. This is my YouTube channel where I talk about all the tarot things that I do. I also have a site, a blog, and a website. It's kind of, TaroticallySpeaking.com, where I write blog posts about all the stuff that I have, all the tarot stuff that I keep doing. I also, review tarot decks and books, and I teach tarot, and I do tarot card readings as well. And if you are curious, I have also written a book about how you can enhance your tarot card reading skills using storytelling techniques. The links for all those things are in the description box below, should you be curious to check it out. Now, this video that I'm going to be doing today, I was thinking about it for quite some time, ever since, it was the 1st of July. I was like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Because every month I pick a theme for the month, and I make the first video that I make for the of that month is usually centered around that theme, and usually, it's all about, for example, the theme for this month is warmth and shine. And I said, okay, let me just, like usually I would do a video where I say, okay, so where in my life do I need to bring warmth, and where do I shine, where do I don't shine? But the thing is, I already kind of asked those questions in my previous video where I do the theme and intention, where I set the, check out, get guidance, sorry, for the theme of the month and set my intention for the month. So I kind of already sort of did that, and I didn't want to do a repetition. So I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I said, okay, you know what? I have a bunch of these very interesting decks. And since warmth and shine are the themes of the month, I said, which card in our tarot deck represents it? You guys must have guessed it. It's the Sun card. I mean, come on, you guys are smart. The point is, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a comparative analysis of the Sun card through history. Okay, understand, I am not perfect. My knowledge is therefore not perfect. But, and I'm a student, I'm always a student. Yes, it's been 10 years, but I'm still a student. I'm still learning. The cards are always revealing their mystery to me. So what you will see in this presentation that I'm showing off my keynote skills in is basically so far where I'm at in terms of the knowledge part of it, because this is pure looking at the image of the card, looking at the symbolism as much as I can, as much as I know. And if you could see the mess on my desk here, there's a bunch of books and decks out here which I will be totally referring to. So know that, okay? So it's not like I'm just randomly talking. I can't memorize everything. No human being can. But the point is, so what we'll look at in this video is how the Sun card, with the imagery having changed through time, has also retained its core meaning regardless. And the basic, obviously, the whole sort of central core of the Sun obviously is warmth and shine. So let's go. So the Sun card, in this presentation, I'm attempting to sort of have a look at how the Sun card evolved from its oldest sort of past sort of version to the Sun card that we kind of know and love and see today. I'm not going to be using a bunch of decks, but I am definitely going to be looking at the classic decks that are out there. So, it's not going to be like an overview of the Sun card through like 50 different decks. It's just these basic few decks that are the kind of basis in a way for the imagery of the Sun card as we see it through across different decks, all kinds of decks out there today. So of course, the very first deck that we're going to look at, or the image rather, is from the Visconti-Sforza deck that was drawn by Bonifacio Bembo. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. This image actually is from this deck called the Golden Tarot by Mary Packard. And I'm just going to be sort of referring to the blurb on the back of the book that came with this deck. It says, the Visconti-Sforza deck is one of the oldest and most complete tarot decks in existence, dating back to the mid-15th century. Commissioned by Filippo Maria Visconti, the Duke of Milan, and by his successor Francesco Sforza. Many of the cards portray members of the Sforza and Visconti families in period garments. Originally, it was designed to play the then popular game of Trionfi, but over the next 3 centuries, the cards became tools of divination, which is how they are most commonly associated today. So, you know, in this in the book, that if you buy this copy of the Golden Tarot deck, I will put the link in the description box, of course. So if you buy a copy of this deck, along with that deck comes a book, and in that book you have a lot of information, not just about the cards themselves and the illustrations and the style and so forth, but a little bit of, you know, the history of the Visconti and the Sforza families. So, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to look at is this image, okay? This image of the Sun card from the Visconti-Sforza deck actually shows a winged child or a cherub, also known as a puto. I hope I'm pronouncing that right in Italian. Now, this is considered to be a popular figure in Renaissance art, and you know, it's a favorite heraldic device of the Visconti-Sforza family. So it's something that, you know, they really used to like this. You know, the sun is shaped like the head of the Greek or Roman god of light, Apollo. And you see this winged child sort of carrying or holding this, and he's floating on this blue cloud, if you've noticed. And you know, there is a cliff's edge in the background, but in the foreground, but the child is kind of not anywhere near it. That's what the book says. Now he also wears some kind of a beaded necklace that might be his good luck charm. And now it says in the book that with the appearance of the sun, the twins of mythology, that is the moon goddess Diana and the sun god Apollo, are united. And this represents completion and the balancing of opposites. From the point of view of psychology, this represents the merging of the conscious and the unconscious mind. So, based on all of this, the upright meaning says, you know, if it shows up upright in a reading, it denotes an ideal in all things, including health, perfect harmony, unity, balance between the masculine and feminine, deepening love, fame, pleasure, satisfaction. And of course, reversed will show loneliness, a clouded future, and an unhappy relationship. Of course, bear in mind, not all these meanings will apply, obviously, in a reading. We know that, right? We've seen enough spirit videos for that, but no, just for the newcomers here, not all these meanings obviously apply all at once. It's one of those meanings. Now, the symbolism here in this card, right, it is for those who really, really are into the mythology of things. So that's why the Apollo becomes important. That's why the cherub becomes important. Because back then, that is how the imagery kind of represented everything. And, you know, the myths themselves conveyed a lot. Hence, the sun became the card which talked about, everything good and nice and balanced and amazingly, because obviously at some point everything becomes great. This is in the journey of the major arcana. Sun is card number 19, so it is, I think, 2021, third last, right? Just 2 cards before the world card. So world card, if world card is kind of completion in a way, or success in a way, or then the sun card is just 2 cards before that. And in this way, you see, this is how the imagery of the Visconti-Sforza card kind of showed, the meaning of the sun in it. So let's look at the next one. And this is your Tarot of Marseille. And now this is an image from the deck that was created by Alejandro Jodorowsky, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Philippe Camoin, right? Now in this card, we see the representation of the two of, now we have 2 children. We have 2 people in the card, and of course the big bright sun. In the previous image, of course, we had, the child carrying the sun, right? But in this image, we have the sun in the sky and 2 children on the ground, and there's a wall. Now, see, this is where I would say, I would say this is the point where suddenly things changed in a certain way, because this imagery kind of became the basis for future imagery. I would say that because, a lot of the cards that will follow that came about, we will see, these imagery elements are kind of common across the board, more or less, from starting from the Tarot de Marseille. So let's go and let's look at what the see, here's a bunch of stuff. I have the book here. I have the page bookmarked and everything, but I've also, these are my kind of notes here. So I'm just going to refer to that. This card, he says, is the archetype of the universal father. Okay? The sun is the symbol of life and love. It's the master of the heavens, because, it's a center of our solar system. It is also the source of all heat and light, and so it gives life to all creatures. In this image, the sun is at the zenith. So you can see it's right at the top. So you see there are no shadows underneath the characters, the 2 people there. They don't have any shadows. That's because it's right on top, and so all these shadows have been eliminated. Right? Now these 2 figures, they represent the 2 people. These are actually 2 guys, which is again interesting. They represent relationship of mutual aid or friendship. It's a profound and free friendship. It's human love in its purest state. So the figure on the right side represents active consciousness, and the figure on the left side, it looks like he's allowing himself to be led. Now that, if you see also, he's got a little tail, which is the vestige of his animal nature. Basically, what they're trying to show here is that the adult will guide the inner child towards joy, right? The figure on the active side, which is on the right, is guiding the figure on the left side, which kind of has a little bit of that tail there. That's the inner child, because a little bit of the animal nature there. But the figure on the right, the active side, is guiding the figure on the left, which is the passive side, towards joy. Now behind them, you will see the wall. And again, this wall is very common. You will notice it across various cards from this point. This wall was not there, I think, in the previous card. So this wall, what Jodorowsky writes in his book, he says that already in this crisis, a new construction is in place. Right? So this means that these 2 individuals are breaking from their past and are triggering a new life. So he says the key words for this card are heat, love, new life, construction, passage, awareness, cosmic father, twinship, to radiate, to cross, childhood, success, evolution. And in a reading, this card can stand for, of course, new construction, unconditional love, success based on the ardent and enlightened approach, realization in emotional or intellectual or creative or material aspects, leaving the past behind, a new life begins, meeting of a kindred spirit, signing of a good contract, awakening of the male spirit in the heart of the feminine. This is interesting. And father or paternal archetype and heat. So the common theme is obviously that if you see from the Visconti-Sforza deck, from that card and this Marseille card, we have the sun, but now the connection with Apollo is kind of not there, right? The mythical connection. I mean, it's there. It's kind of implied in a way. We see the twins. We see two characters. These could be the twins. This could be Apollo and Diana. But it's not specifically said that. In fact, the imagery kind of does not say that at all. But there are two characters, which is interesting in and of itself now, because the Visconti-Sforza just had one cherub there with the head of the Apollo representing sun. He's carrying that, floating there. But now the sun is there in the sky by itself, and you see these droplets. Like, this is basically the sun giving its energy or its light or its blessings kind of there. And then the wall appears, right? The wall represents the new construction. In a very simplistic way, a wall is a barrier, right? So something is there beyond the wall and something is there in front of the wall, which we are seeing. Like, these two are in front of it. They've crossed it. And they have crossed that wall. They've crossed that barrier. And so something is already being triggered. Something new is already in place. And the active person or the person on the right is actually leading the passive person on, the person on the left towards finding a way to away from maybe his animal nature to his, inner joy. So there is that evolution. There is that, kind of, you can say, bonding, friendship, right? There is, of course, a meeting of opposites. There is a awakening of the consciousness, and all of that, the crossing of barriers and borders, and something new starting. And then you have, of course, the big bright sun in the sky, which is your, the heat and light giver, which of course is father sun, and therefore the father or paternal archetype. And so all these meanings sort of show up now in the Tarot de Marseille deck. Okay. So now, from the Marseille deck, let's move on to the next one in the journey. And this is our familiar, universal weight deck, which the imagery is based on the Rider-Waite deck. So this is the recolored by Mary Hanson Roberts version. Again, now, see the interesting change here. We have that big bright sun up in the sky. We have that wall. We have sunflowers on that wall. And now, instead of two children, we have one child, and we also have a horse. Right? The horse was not there in the previous cards. Like, the cherub was floating on the cloud, and then in the Tarot de Marseille, we just had two children. Now we have a child on a horse. Now, you could say, now this is something interesting, you could say that, instead of the child which had the animal, vestiges of the animal nature, now they've just shown an animal there. That's an interesting thing that just popped in my head right now. And of course, the child here in this particular card, the child is holding a orange banner. So let's see what this card is all about. Now, for this card, okay, just to retain the sort of purity in terms of the meaning, interpretation, and so forth, this information is something that I have borrowed from the Pictorial Key to the Tarot, the book that was originally accompanying the Rider-Waite deck. Okay, this was written by Arthur Edward Waite. So I know that we have a bunch of meanings for the sun, but I'm just going back to the original to sort of, come to a point where, this is what the creator intended to say with this card kind of energy. So here we see that, and I'm just, quoting from the book here, the notes that I have put up here, is that he's coming out from the walled garden of the sensitive life and passing on the journey home. This journey, because remember, he has now crossed that barrier, the wall, right? So he says, Waite says that this is the walled garden of the sensitive life, and he's passing from there towards, on a journey towards his home. So this represents the transit from the manifest light of this world, which is represented by the sun, to the light of the world to come, which is the heart of the child. Right? So sun being the whole, what's manifested, what's out there, what this world is already there, to what will come, which is at the heart of a child. That's pure innocence in a way, right? So sun becomes the consciousness in the spirit, which is the direct antithesis of reflected light, which, they're referring to the moon card here, because the moon reflects the sun's light. So this is a total opposite of that. So it is a consciousness in the spirit. And this is again a meaning that has kind of, now become, you could say, is you can see that showing up in all the cards, the consciousness of the spirit. Humanity has become a child, Waite says, and this child basically is simplicity and innocence in the sense of wisdom. So again, everything is reduced to simple and innocent and just playfulness, pure playfulness there. And this is a direct quote from the book, where Waite says, when the self-knowing spirit has dawned in the consciousness above the natural mind, that mind in its renewal leads forth the animal nature in a state of perfect conformity. So that could again refer to that animal nature which we saw in the previous Tarot de Marseille card, and could also refer to the animal in the card itself. We have the horse. So that horse represents the animal nature, right? And so the self-knowing spirit has dawned in the consciousness above the natural mind. So which that sun there, big, bright, shiny sun, is the self-knowing spirit which has dawned in the consciousness above the natural mind. And that mind in its renewal, which is the child here, is leading the animal nature, which is the horse, in a state of perfect conformity. Okay, so upright now, this card means material happiness, fortunate marriage, and contentment. Whereas reversed, it means the same but in a lesser sense. Now again, these are the meanings that I have just copied or picked up from the PKT, the Pictorial Key to the Tarot. Of course, we now know that the Sun card also has a bunch of other meanings, right? We know that it is consciousness becoming simple and innocent, or consciousness manifesting, or you're crossing barriers. And now, of course, with the animal nature, is being led forward towards more, becoming more more evolved, or evolving the animal nature. The sunflowers stand for devotion, actually, because the sunflower always looks at the sun. So all of those extra meanings are of course there, but then the common themes now, or in terms of imagery at least, we know we have this big bright sun in the sky. We have a child or two children down there, or two characters. In this case, we have the horse. Let's not forget that represents the animal nature. There's a common theme there. There's a wall there, right? And that wall represents crossing the barriers, because our characters are on the front side of the wall, not on the back of the wall, right? So moving on, let's look at another sun card. This is again the sun card from the very lovely Thought deck that was created by Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Harris. Check it out. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, there's something just mesmerizing about the imagery of the thought, and believe me, I'm still studying this, so I'm not 100% about this. So I'm referring to this book that I'm using to study the Crowley deck. This is the Handbook to the Crowley Cards by Akron and Hajo Banzaf. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I hope so. But this book is again very detailed. It goes very, very much in depth, about the imagery and the symbolism and the whole thing. It's just too detailed, and this is really something else. So I haven't gone in much detail, honestly. If you see, I have just taken the main parts. I've put it out here as my notes. So, because I'm trying to see the common sort of themes here in this whole, what do you say, sun card imagery. And of course, now again, we have that big bright sun up in the sky. And now we have again two creatures or characters, human characters down there. There is a wall. If you look closely, right behind these two winged children or cherubs, as we know them now, there is a green sort of hill, and the top of the hill we see a red and orange, whatever, wall there. That is the wall there, right? Now, ignore the rest of it, more or less, because again, I'm not getting into that imagery, because we see again, if you see all around the card, the border, we have all the 12 signs, right? That's something interesting, but we'll not get into that right now. If you see now, the image shows the sun, and the rays are, of the sun are going across the image, right? They're shining upon everything. So this is a symbol of the power of life, the very hub of creation. The rays penetrate everything, right? And upon the wings of these rays of creation, the human being can let himself be carried beyond himself. Again, that's directly quoted from the book. His inner sun has become the external source of light, streaming through all levels. This is really deep. Take a moment to sit with this, right? The sun is sending, the rays through everything. It's the very hub of creation, that heat, that light that penetrates and shines everywhere. These creation rays, and upon these rays, the human being lets himself be carried beyond himself, right? It's very symbolic. It's very kind of poetic in a way. His inner sun now, right? That means that the inner source of light within him has now become the external source of light, which streams through all levels of his existence, right? The enlightening powers of consciousness with which we achieve clarity and can overcome troubles and fears. This is what that inner light and the external light, what they genuinely have started to represent now are the enlightening powers of consciousness with which we can find clarity and overcome our fears and troubles and everything. So this is something that comes from, emerges from within. It's conscious there, right? That consciousness always shows up. Sun is very much a representation of the human consciousness become more enlightened, yeah? And the light of the sun can thus help us surmount the shadow. Again, this is something that shows up common with theme in the Marseille and the Thought deck now again. Now, if you see the image of the sun, right in the center of that image, you see something like a rose flower that is blooming. And that is the fusion with light. When just fusing with this, with light, this is the rose of wisdom that's blooming. So the sun is the divine ego. And the goal of our journey towards ourselves, plus the conscious portion of the unfathomable mystery of life. Right? So this is what the sun represents. It is the goal of our journey towards ourselves, and it is the conscious awareness of what the mysteries of life are all about. And now again, here's what they, the thought deck or the imagery there, the red wall on the green hill behind the winged children. That wall now represents the wall of paradise that separates human beings from the divine. Now, quoting directly from the book, it says it is dangerous to cross it without proper initiation, right? So anybody and everybody obviously cannot get in there, because now you will receive pure light, right, in that space. Correct? You'll become divine, because once you cross that wall, that side of the wall. So that is now what they are saying here is that wall separates us from the divine. And when they're showing the characters on this side of the wall, now previously with the Rider-Waite, we had said, oh, you're crossing the wall, you've crossed the wall, you come this side, you've crossed a certain barrier, and you've grown and you've evolved. But now what they say is that if you want to evolve, because this wall is, it's the border of paradise. So with proper initiation, of course, if you cross that wall, you're going the other side now, right? You will evolve into something more divine. So this is an interesting turn of events, so to speak, if you really must look at the imagery that way. And this is another, interesting facet of the imagery of this card. But all in all, the common theme of consciousness, the divine light sort of permeating everything is pretty much everywhere, and we see these themes as common across all cards. And now let's look at all these 4 sun cards right next to each other. Ooh, from left to right, you can kind of see the evolution in the whole journey of the sun card. Again, like I said, these are just the very classic decks that that we keep going back to, in a certain way. So that's why I've just kept these 4 decks in this particular sort of comparative study. So on the left, the very first available or the first deck that we well preserved tarot deck that's out there, the Visconti-Sforza deck. Again, you have just the one winged cherub child holding the image of the sun, in the face of Apollo. So first time we see actually a face in the imagery of the sun, and that is again common across the first 3 cards, not in the sun of the thought deck though, but all the other 3 suns, even the Marseille sun, the Rider-Waite sun, you'll have the eyes and the face kind of in the sun there. You could say it is the sun god kind of represented there as a person. So that you can say is a theme that got carried through. Of course, in the thought deck, the sun has a rose, an emerging rose, because there again it's going again very esoteric, a very occult imagery there in the thought deck. And there's another change about the wall as well. Now, the first image of the Visconti deck does not have a wall. It has a cliff's edge though. In the background, you can see a castle and everything, but again, you don't necessarily see a very specifically drawn wall. Okay, he's floating on the cloud, he's carrying the sun, and he's going about his business. That's the imagery there. Now, in the Tarot de Marseille and in the thought deck, again, you see that same kind of trio showing up. The big bright sun up in the sky. The stuff, like in the Tarot de Marseille, you have droplets of the brightness kind of, falling down on the earth. And here you have these actual rays sort of coming out of the sun, permeating everything. And you have 2 children or 2 characters, right? There's also the common wall there. Now, in the Rider-Waite card, of course, we have that sun, we have the rays, but we also have the wall, but we have 1 child and 1 animal. And on the wall, we have the sunflowers, which in the 3 walls that are there, I think that's the only card that has that sunflower there. Again, if we see the wall, just by itself, it represents, in the Tarot de Marseille, Jodorowsky says the wall represents a new construction, a new beginning, something new is taking place. In the Sun card of the Rider-Waite, it represents a crossing of a boundary, right? But very, like total 180 in the Sun card of the Thoth, we see that it actually encloses paradise. So it kind of indicates that, hey, it's not, you don't have to come out of there, you're going to go back in there. Right? So that's, again, very, very interesting. The common theme, in a certain way, we have these children. We have these kind of semi-nude children showing up in all these cards. We have the sun showing up in all the cards. Of course, there's the Sun card. But, again, so that's the big, and all across the theme, that the one thing that sort of carries across all the cards is that sun represents light, heat, consciousness, right? Very masculine energy, something that will sort of shed light on something, and open up something, enlighten something, bring light to something. So that is a very common theme across all the 4 sun cards that are there in our study today. So that is, again, interesting. So what we see here is a distinct evolution, certain themes being taken, certain things being removed, certain things totally, like in the Thoth deck, it's totally turned on its head, with the wall representing something else altogether. So it's a revelation. And I think that now you may wonder, of course, what's the point, Madhvi? Why are we looking at all this? The point is, historically, if you see, as these decks were created, and if you also look at the different times when these decks came into being, this imagery, you'll see how this imagery actually means something, right? That I would say that would be your homework, right? Just go online and see when each of these decks came about, and kind of what was going on in Europe, politically, but just briefly, what was going on in Europe at that point of time, and you will see that these images now bring out a certain kind of the ethos of those times. All right. It'll be especially interesting to look at the Rider-Waite and the Thoth decks, because although Waite and Crowley were part of the same secret society, their approaches are different, and the time frames, right, for when both these decks came out, there was a big difference. There was a huge difference, and the world had literally changed a lot in that time frame. So you can see that. You can, you juxtapose the imagery and the sense of what you're getting from that imagery against the history or the times, what's going on in the world around that time. You will see how these images kind of reflect the sense or the ethos of those times. But regardless, the meaning evolves a certain way, but certain aspects of the meaning remain the same. So that is something very interesting to observe and to note. And you can then, say that, okay, the Sun card, by and large, represents a very male energy, it's kind of a representation of the consciousness of the human spirit, something that will take you more towards, evolution, that will start, creating a new sort of some, level, building taking you towards something new, and something evolving into something higher and better than what you already are. So that theme or that meaning sort of remains common. Of course, there's the very typical, very, the normal meanings of light and heat that remain pretty common across all these cards. All right. So with that said, now let's look. I'm gonna, this is a very shiny bonus, of course. Let's look at the Sun card in the Lenormand deck. Yay! Okay, so in the Lenormand, the way of looking at things is kind of different. So it does not matter which deck it is, okay? The imagery does not lead to the interpretation. I mean, it's the symbol and the meaning of the symbol that may or can evolve over time. That we've seen that with the tarot. But with the Lenormand, the image doesn't, how do you say it, affect, or the contents of the image in that way do not necessarily affect the interpretation of it. So the Sun card means what it means across all the Sun cards in any Lenormand deck. So I picked two images just to kind of show the contrast. The first image on the left, you can recognize the Sun. It's Pixie's, handiwork. It's the Pixie's astounding Lenormand deck. And the second one is the Sun from one of my favorite decks, the Dreaming Way Lenormand. And so I'm going to use those two images as a reference point. And here we have. Now, interestingly, the Sun in the Lenormand kind of goes right back to the same ethos, or the image, the symbol means more or less the same things that we've seen in the tarot, kinda. Now again, I'm borrowing heavily from Rana George's book, or rather I'm referring heavily to Rana George's Essential Lenormand book. So know that, okay? The Sun obviously is the source of life, right? So it represents a new beginning, a bright new day, life, light, warmth, heat, success, glory, victory. We've seen all that in the tarot as well. It illuminates our path, it brings success, it dispels ignorance, it shines a light on all that is obscure, it gives courage. It talks about, now we're kind of going more into the Lenormand side of things. It talks about recognition, fame, a powerful reputation, ego, pride, sense of self-esteem. If you're talking a person, it can represent someone who has a charming personality, very masculine, very confident. He can be a leader. Kind of negative angle would be egotistical, self-centered, vain. In terms of locations, the Sun can talk about sunny locations like a beach or a tropical location. And in terms of time, it can show maybe summer or daytime, when the Sun is in the sky. And it has a very positive, optimistic kind of vibration. And this is, where in terms of Lenormand, if you have a negative card, because in the Lenormand, placement of the card matters, right? Which card is before, which card comes after. So if, let's say you have the Coffin, which is a very negative card in the Lenormand, and then you have the Sun card that shows up after it. So I would say, wow, because the Coffin talks about maybe a box even, or an ending. And then the Sun card talks about something that is a new beginning, that is a successful thing, or it illuminates or shines something. So if, let's say the Coffin talked about a box, then the Sun would illuminate what's in the box, because a coffin is a closed box. The Sun is going to show us what's in there. If the Coffin talks about an ending, then the Sun will say that ending is actually going to be something good, something that will work out really well for you, or that ending will lead to something really positive, and after that something new comes which will be amazing. So what happens is, negative cards, if the Sun is follows a negative card or is preceded by a negative card, it really shines things up, and it negates a lot of the negativity there. So of course the story is different if it's the other way around, naturally. So if the Sun was followed by a coffin, you'd see light, which is now shut in a box. So you could say, oh, something beautiful and bright is now ending, right? Or Sun followed by scythe, this your fame or your success will be cut, right? So again, in the Lenormand, placement matters. And so the Sun represents something really bright and positive and awesome. And it also of course, it represents the end of troubles, financial gain, success. The meaning, essentially what I'm trying to say, is that the core meaning of the Sun card, which is light, where, and the translation of that shining a light energy across various aspects kind of remains the same even in the Lenormand. So that's interesting, except of course now you would be looking at the placements of the cards, and then the meaning will take shape there. So that was the little shiny bonus about the Sun card there for you. So this brings us to the end of our lovely, the lovely keynote presentation that I made. And so a warm and bright and sunny thank you for watching my presentation and appreciating the Sun card so much. Whoa, that was something, wasn't it? Was it too bright for you with all the sun? Right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it, please just give me a big thumbs up so that I know that you liked it. And so I know, like, if you like these kind of videos, I can make more of them. So let me know in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, good Lord, what are you doing? Subscribe already. So, and I think click the bell icon. So every time I put up a new video, you guys will know about it. And then, of course, if you want a reading for yourself, go right ahead, book the reading. The link is in the description box. If you want to learn tarot from me, totally do. We can totally figure that out. Again, link is in the description. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these places. What I do every day is I post a card a day reading. I choose a deck every month. This month is the Neon Moon Tarot, which is a totally cool cyberpunk deck, and I have reviewed it last month. And I'll put the link somewhere, up here somewhere. I think up there. Anyway, the point is, go check out the video. Follow me on these social media places so you can see my card a day reading, and so you can have fun. You can kind of learn the deck as you go along if you like. And yeah, so and keep in touch. Totally. Write me, email me, ask me questions. I'm more than happy to talk tarot all day. Okay, so I will see you again in my next video. In the meantime, stay good, be good, play with the cards. Bye now.